The Sunday school lesson for July 27, 2025 is Jesus predicts the temple's destruction. Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 through 14. Welcome, viewers and subscribers, to my channel, The Backstory and More. I am Audrey. If you are interested in knowing what happens before each Sunday school lesson, you are at the right place because I will share the backstory, read the lesson text, and offer a brief lesson summary. The backstory. The Temple of Jerusalem played a central role in Israel's history, and it had a special connection with the nation's kings. King David had sought to build a temple as a grand replacement for the portable tabernacle, which Israel had carried through the wilderness. Instead, God said that David's son would build a temple. True enough, Solomon built the temple as David had planned, but Solomon proved unfaithful, and the nation divided into two after his death. Instead of a place for all God's people to come, the location of God's sanctuary became a source of jealousy, a jealous conflict between the kings of Judah and Israel. The unfaithfulness of Judah's rulers contributed to the temple's being stripped of its glory. The armies of Babylon eventually destroyed it after a successful siege of Jerusalem. When exiles of Judah returned to their land in 536 BC, the faithful few set to work rebuilding a temple. The resulting structure was far from the grandeur of the first temple. Hundreds of years later, Herod the Great made the second temple magnificent. Herod had a selfish motive for his project: to share his family's right to rule. Josephus, the first century Jewish historian, states that 10,000 skilled workers and masons had contributed to this structure, and it had required 1,000 carts to bring the bright white stones to set in place. Jesus entered this renovated temple after coming to Jerusalem and being heralded as God's promised king. But instead of praising this impressive temple, Jesus cast out the money changers and merchants and criticized what he saw. The temple's leaders questioned his authority to do this, and he silenced them with a dilemma using a question of his own and parables. In Matthew chapters 22 through 23, Jesus remained in the temple and continued to face down his hostile audience. He did not relent from his criticisms, and fear of the Passover crowds kept Jesus from being arrested immediately. The book of Matthew is recognized as featuring 5 discourses. Today's text is part of the 5th of those known as the Olivet Discourse. Mark chapter 13, verses 1 through 13, and Luke chapter 21, 5 through 19 are parallel accounts to today's text. The backstory ends here, and today's lesson begins with the next slide. Verses 1 through 2. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. "Do you see all these things?" he asked. "Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." Verses 3 through 4. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. "Tell us," they said, "when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus answered, "Watch out that no one deceives you." Verses 5 through 6. "For many will come in my name, claiming, 'I am the Messiah,' and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Verses 7 through 8. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Verses 9 through 11. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Verses 12 through 14. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. A brief summary. Jesus' pronouncement of woes against the religious leaders ended with his lament over Jerusalem. In that lament, he looked toward the time of his return. In sessions of teaching on the Mount of Olives with his disciples, Jesus responded to their questions about two separate events: the judgment coming on Jerusalem and the end of the age. Because both events are addressed, scholars have long debated which things refer solely to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 and which refer to the second coming. The Jewish nation had made many wrong decisions, each moving it closer to judgment. In rejecting Jesus, they passed the point of no return. Nothing but a downward slide to destruction could follow. People want to know the future. That was the impetus for the disciples' question about the end. After all, if I can see the definite signs that the end is approaching, won't I be able to make better plans? The passage of 20 centuries has not changed human nature in this regard. We ask the same questions as the first century disciples. In that regard, Jesus did not answer in terms of the end, but in terms of the beginning. And that beginning features all the same human evils as have ever existed. Rather than planning for the end that we imagine, we do greater service to Christ by recognizing the beginning, which is always now, the time between Jesus' first and second comings. So, what does that mean for his followers in this day and age? It means we must remain faithful, patient, and willing to endure hardship and suffering. We can do so because we have hope that comes by submitting to Jesus' authority despite the world's self-indulgence. As we wait for our King to return, we represent him on earth, noticing Jesus' presence among those in need. As Jesus has been faithful to his Father in heaven, so we must be faithful to Jesus. This is our task: faithfulness. The best sports teams are good at playing both offense and defense. We are on the defense with the gospel and the power of God behind us. We play good defense when we train ourselves to recognize false prophets and false Christs. Failing to be on the offensive in taking the gospel to the world puts us in the position of the unfruitful tree that is subject to being cut down. Failing to play good defense, the primary point of today's study, results in being led astray. Thank you so very much for listening, and join me soon for the next backstory and more. Stay safe and may God bless.